Good morning, all of you. I just want to take you through a certain special type of risk management, that is the cybersecurity management. And it has become very much important as from this recent COVID outbreak and all. Then most of the firms started working online. So that created this environment to have a more concern on cybersecurity. Earlier also we had certain concerns on information security, cyber security, and all sort of things, but it has become so important after the COVID outbreak, and later on most of the firms had to work online, and they used digital channels. So because of that, the importance has come to a very high status. So today I just try to explain you the details of these information security and the cyber security, where you have to go through certain text. Now, what I want to tell you is, now these things actually, now there are bulky text here, but what I will do is I just go take you through these documents, and I just put you into a certain highlighted area, and we can have a discussion, and then you will be able to grasp the main ideas from those texts. All are taken or extracted from textbooks, they are highly recognized in the field. Therefore, hello, yeah, any issue? Then I will just put those things into your screen, and then you will be in a position to just look at it and get an idea. But you have enough time, or you can have your own references to these documents, and those documents will be sent to your mails. So then you are in a position to go through these things leisurely. And this is a very challenging exercise. So therefore, what you can do is you can gain some knowledge, and you will be in a position to apply those things in your day-to-day activities. So therefore, this is very important. So your active participation in the discussion is important. Otherwise, now you may not be in a position to go through these text and grasp the very important factors given there. So I advise all of you to actively participate in the discussion. Right, I will just give you this chapter 1 of this particular book, and the chapter 1 deals with information security essentials for IT managers, protecting mission critical systems. Now, this is a very important point to note in our cyber security or information security management. There are information security management is as a field, it's increasing in demand and responsibility, because most organizations spend increasingly larger percentages of their IT budgets in attempting to manage risk and mitigate intrusions. Not to mention the trend in many enterprises of moving all IT operations to an internet-connected infrastructure, known as enterprise cloud computing. Now, I think this is another topic. Now it has become so important, the cloud computing, because it's a type of public type of area where you can deal with. For information security managers, it is critical or crucial to maintain a clear perspective of all the areas of business that require protection. Through collaboration with all business units, security managers must work security into the process of all aspects of the organization. From employee training to research and development, security is not an IT problem, it is a business problem. So this is what you need to understand, because though the IT people will have to enroll in these things, but it is a business problem. It is not an IT problem, basically, the security. Now, when you talk in terms of scope of information security management, now as it is a business problem. It is not solely on technical control. The other thing that we need to understand, they have given 10 domains with regard to this security management, and we call it common body of knowledge. So we will just look at these 10 domains. Right. I think rather than going into more details, you need to have a sketchy type of understanding of these things. This is what you call the common body of knowledge. So you can just look at these things, because now I will just go to the cybersecurity management later on. Now, this is only a very superficial explanation on this IT security or whatever. So in other words, the information security. So you can have a sketchy idea about these 10 domains of ISSP or whatever, information security, system security perspective. So just look at it. The first thing is access control. Then telecommunications and network security. So I think this you can highlight these things. During the discussion, you will be in a position to just take a note on these things, and you can now note down somewhere, and you can just later on when you refer the things, you will be in a position to focus more attention on these things. Access control is the first domain. Then you have another domain, telecommunications and network security. Then information security and risk management. Then application security. Then cryptography, and security architecture and design. Then operations security, business continuity and disaster recovery planning, legal, regulatory, compliance and investigations, physical security or environmental security. Now, these are the 10 domains on which the information security management is really based on. In this page, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 domains in left hand side and another 5 domains in the right hand side. Now we can just go through each domain and the real meaning of each domain. Access control. Now, methods used to enable administrators and managers to define what objects a subject can access through authentication and authorization, providing each subject a list of capabilities it can perform in each object. Important areas include access control security models, identification and authentication technologies, access control administration, and single sign-on technologies. Now, I think that this is really leads to the password controls. Access control is that. So then when a password is given and usernames are given, then all these password authorities should have limitations. So each level will, for each level, there should be a limited authorization process. So in other words, their capabilities has to be limited. So that is what you mean by access control. So then this password security and that type of things are very much important for this access control management. Then the next one is telecommunications and network security. Examination of internal, external, public and private network communication systems, including devices, protocols and remote access. Now this is another important point to note, because when you deal with communications, networks and all, there will be severe issues coming up. Now, in order to get this activated, so you have to be careful about the networks and all other telecommunication devices. Then the information security and risk management, including physical, technical, and administrative controls surrounding organization assets to determine the level of protection and budget warranted by highest to lowest risk. So this is really the information security. It is only one domain in that case. The goal is to reduce potential threats and money loss. Then application security, that is, application security involves the controls placed within the application programs. So application programs in the sense, now when you deal with computers, you have different types of applications which you need to follow. So those applications also should have some security controls. Systems to support the security policy of the organization and measure its effectiveness. Topics include threats, applications development, availability issues, security design, and vulnerabilities. Then you have cryptography. Now this is a very, very specialized subject. The use of various methods and techniques such as symmetric encryption to achieve desired levels of confidentiality. So this is what you call the encryption. Encryption is a particular methodology where you can securitize the information. Important areas including encryption protocols and applications and public key infrastructure. So these things are really a specialized subject. And when the cryptography is taken into consideration, we can see that when you use information, that information has to be encrypted. So encrypted in the sense, now no one can really access into that when it is encrypted. Only the cryptographical access points only can use to access to that type of information. Then security architecture and design. This area covers the concepts, principles, and standards used to design and implement secure applications, operating systems, and all platforms based on international evaluation criteria, such as trusted computer security evaluation criteria. Then operation security, controls over personal hardware systems, and no, those are normal controls. Operation security, controls over personal hardware systems, and auditing and monitoring techniques such as maintenance of audiovisual training, auditing and resource protection, preventive, detective, corrective and recovery controls, and security and fault tolerance technologies. Then this is a very important point, business continuity and disaster recovery planning. This has been given as a regulation here in Sri Lanka, and at least you have to do 2 disaster recovery testing per annum. The main purpose of this area is to preserve business operations when faced with disruptions or disasters. Important aspects are to identify resource values, perform a business impact analysis, and produce business unit priorities, contingency plans, and crisis management. Now, I think this is with regard to the business continuity planning. Then the next one is the legal, regulatory compliance and investigations. Computer crime, government laws and regulations, and geographic locations will determine the types of actions that constitute wrongdoing, what is suitable evidence, and what type of licensing and privacy laws your organization must abide by. Then the physical security concerns itself with threats, risk, and countermeasures to protect facilities, hardware, data, media, and personnel. Main topics include restricted areas, authorization models, intrusion detection, fire detection, and security guards. Now, all these are physical and environmental securities. This is regarding that. Now, you can just look at this diagram. Now, in this diagram, uh, there are three aspects taken into consideration. The physical aspects are there, technical aspects are there, organizational aspects are there. Now you can just look at it and see the color used in that. The physical aspects given in this color, I think, I don't know whether it is very much traceable. Anyway, now when you say security policy, it is a physical aspect. Uh, Organizational security, it is an organizational aspect. Asset classification and control, that is also physical aspect. Access control is a technical aspect. Compliance is a organizational aspect. Personal security is a physical aspect. Physical and environmental security also physical aspect. This black system development and maintenance, that is a technical aspect. Communications and operations management, that is also a technical aspect. Business continuity management, it is an organizational aspect. Right. Now I think this is a very important diagram. So you can just look at these things and you can summarize everything into this. Because when you go by these domains, now all these domains are categorized into three aspects. One, some domains are in under the physical aspects, other domains are in the technical aspects, remaining ones are in organizational aspects. Now you can just look at a definition for a threat. Now you can see the security framework. At the ground level, you have the physical and environmental security. Then you have front-end system security, back-end system security, comprehensive security awareness, definite security, that is the level 5. Prevention goes to the upper levels, and recovery and all comes to the ground level. And you can just look at this checklist. It is highly technical. As a risk manager, you need to have an overview of these things. And you can look at these domains here, starting with the security policy, organizational security, asset classification and control, personal security, physical and environmental security, communication and operations management, access control, system development and maintenance, business continuity management and compliance. Now, these are the types of common attacks we can expect. Malicious code malware, that is virus or whatever. Then social engineering, the art of manipulating people into performing actions or divulging confidential information. That is what you call social engineering. Industrial espionage, that is you just steal some information and give it to some other parties. Theft of trade secrets, bribery, blackmail, and all sort of things. Then spam, flashing, and hoaxes. These are the types of viruses. Now, I think this is a very important point to note, protecting mission critical systems. So this is a very important area we need to go through. Now, the mission critical system, what you call, that is the IT core of any organization. These are systems without which the mission of the organization, whether building aircraft carriers for the US military or packaging Twinkies to deliver to food markets, could not operate. So that means now if we are talking about a bank, IT is the core of that organization's. It's a very mission critical system because their mission cannot be fulfilled without the proper operation of the IT system. The major components to protecting these systems are detailed throughout. However, with special emphasis on the big picture, and information security manager must keep it. Now in actual terms, these four things are very important for a mission critical protection of a mission critical system. Information assurance, that is the first thing. Information assurance. Information assurance is achieved when information and information systems are protected against attacks through the application of security services such as availability, integrity, authentication, and confidentiality, and non-repudiation. I don't know whether you can just identify these things. I can just explain what it is. Integrity is we can say, such as availability of, so that is what you mean by, when you say information assurance, so you have to assure certain things. The availability of information should be assured. Then the integrity of the information should be assured. Integrity means it's dependability and its accuracy and all sort of things come in under integrity. Then authentication. Authentication is how authorized it is. Then the confidentiality and non-repudiation. What is the meaning of repudiation? So can anyone give me a certain idea about what it is? Non-repudiation is what? What do you mean by repudiation? Because it's a very important point to note. Repudiation means now you do something and you pretend to do something. You have not done it, but you have pretended to do something. That is what you mean by repudiation. The application of these services should be based on the protect, detect, and react paradigms. Protect means you have to provide protection. You have to detect when something goes wrong and react. This means that in addition, in incorporating protection mechanisms, organizations need to expect attacks and include attack detection tools and procedures that allow them to react to and recover from these unexpected attacks. Then the next thing to be concerned is information risk management. Now, these are the risks which can happen. Physical damage. It can happen through fire, water, vandalism, power loss, and natural disasters. The physical damage. Human interaction, accidental or intentional action, no intention that can disrupt productivity. Equipment malfunctions. Internal or external attacks. Misuse of data. Loss of data. Application error. Now, all these things will come to information risk. Now, if you can manage these things, if you can detect and manage these things, then it is a reality of information risk management. Then you need to go through the administrative, technical, and physical controls. Risk analysis. Now, this is a very important point to note because we are really discussing the risk management aspects of these things. Now, when you analyze risk, during risk analysis, there are several units that can help measure risk. Before risk can be measured, though the organization must identify the vulnerabilities and threats against its mission critical systems in terms of business continuity. So this is the important thing. Now we have to look at these things in the perspective of business continuity. During risk analysis, an organization tries to evaluate the cost for each security control that helps mitigate the risk. Because when you just install a security control, it involves a certain cost. So then we have to have an idea about that cost. If the control is cost effective relative to the exposure of the organization, then the control is put in place. So this is a very important aspect when you talk in terms of risk management. Now basically, you need to have controls to avoid certain type of things, certain type of vulnerabilities. But if that is not cost effective, and you have to see the exposure and the cost. If the cost is not justifiable, so we are not in a position to really install that type of a control. But if it is cost effective, then we will be in a position to put in place that particular control. Now, the measure. I think when you talk in terms of risk management, it is very, very important for you to have a measurement. So it is what you call the quantification. You may not be in a position to manage properly something if you have not quantified that particular thing. So therefore, in a risk management perspective, the most important thing is to assess or estimate the quantity of risk. The measure of risk can be determined as a product of threat, vulnerability, and asset value. So risk is equal to the asset into threat into vulnerability. So the meaning here is the substantiality or the volume of risk or the quantity of risk directly depends on asset, the level of threat, the level of vulnerability. These are the main factors of deciding the volume of risk. So that is how the things can take place. And when you talk in terms of risk analysis, it has two types. So one risk analysis is quantitative analysis. So for that, we have now given the basics. So that is why we have given that equation to arrive at risk in a quantitative form. But the other methodology is to uh, qualitative risk management, or in a qualitative form that risk is analyzed. In quantitative risk analysis attempts to assign meaningful numbers to all elements of the risk analysis process. It is recommended for large, costly projects that require exact calculations. It is typically performed to examine the viability of a project's cost or time objectives. Quantitative risk analysis provides answers to three questions that cannot be addressed with deterministic risk and project management methodologies such as traditional cost estimating or project scheduling. But in qualitative risk analysis, we are not going to assign any numerical values. Now, in the form of qualitative approach, it does not require any mathematical things or whatever. It thrives more on the people participating and their backgrounds. Qualitative analysis enables classification of risk that is determined by people's wide experience and knowledge captured within the process. Ultimately, it is not an exact science. So the process will count on expert opinions for its base assumptions. The assessment process uses a structured and documented approach and agreed likelihood and consequence evaluation tables. It is also quite common to calculate risk as a single loss expectancy or annual loss expectancy by project or business function. Now I can just explain this to a certain extent. Now I will just show you on the board the given details here. First of all, I will just show you how to do a quantitative measurement of risk. In what form we can do it. Now you can see risk can be defined as the multiplication of, this is the quantification, right? Asset into threat into vulnerability. Now, when you do this calculation, especially the quantitative risk analysis, we have to assign meaningful numbers to all these aspects. Now, the recommendation is if you are going for a very large project or whatever, then invariably we have to do this quantitative assessment. And we can just explain the viability of project also. So then we are in a position to do that for a very large project. But even for some other purposes also, we can do this quantitative risk management. Now, through the quantitative risk management, we can answer several questions. So, one is the most important thing is the probability of meeting the project objective given all known risk. Then, how much could the overrun or delay be, and therefore how much contingency do we need for the organization's desired level of certainty. Then the third one would be where in the project is the most risk, given the model of the project and totality of all identified and quantified risk. I will just do a small demonstration with regard to this risk quantification, because that will give us a certain focus here, because I just want to show you that, because we need to look at these things in a risk management perspective. Now we can try to see how these things can be materialized. Information risk analysis. There you have a certain mathematical relationship. Here we are referring to the information risk that can be estimated by multiplying asset into threat into vulnerabilities or vulnerability. So now we have to go with each aspect, each factor. Asset is one factor, threat is another factor, vulnerability is another factor. Now here, what we are referring as asset. Asset is the information asset. The meaning of asset is the information asset. So that information asset, we can evaluate, we can value it. We can value that information asset. Now, I don't know whether you can have any example for that. Can you give any example for that? For an information asset? What is the type of an information asset? Yes, because for your understanding, I think those things are very important rather than just reading books or whatever. So you can just identify such type of information assets. Let me have one type of information asset. Yes.
System, using system.
Pardon?
System, use system.
Yeah, systems. Yeah. Or you can have a database even. A database can be taken as an information asset, is it? A database. Because when you deal with your creditors, you have a database of your creditors. So then when you need to take decisions on your creditors, you have to go through that database. So then a database can be taken as a not I mean, even if you take the whole system, that is an asset, that's okay. But I am referring to information assets. When you have information assets can be a database, or otherwise some customer information. So all those things are assets. All those things are assets. So you can have different information assets in your organization. So then you need to just attribute a certain value for that. So that is actually, hypothetically, you have to do that. So I'm just referring to this risk assessment or whatever, because we need to have a quantification. Because of that, we have to assign or we have to attribute a certain value for this particular asset. I'm taking a certain asset as an example. When you say your database of SMI creditors, say, SMI borrowers, or SMI customers, you can say, the database of SMI customers, customer database, their accounting or whatever, their database in the sense their customer accounts, their income, and all sort of things coming under that database. So that database can be taken as an example, right? So then you need to attribute a value for that. You need to attribute a value for that. That value attribution also through a certain agreement or certain type of consultative process or some type of discussion, you need to have that. The information risk managers or people who deal with that activities should get together and take a decision to see that what type of a value to be attributed to that asset. The SMI customer database, right? So I'm just giving an example, right? So then say you have attributed a value for 500 million, say, then asset is 500 million. There's a number involved. Then you need to go to the threats. Now threat is also we can attribute a certain financial value for that threat. Now, for example, say some other anonymous or some type of a hacker can just enter into your system and grab the information of those SMI customers. So that might cost you so much of things. So then you can attribute a certain value for that. Now, one threat is, unauthorized access to those information. That is one threat. Likewise, you can just name the different types of threats which can happen or which can happen to that asset. Or any virus can be inserted to that database. So likewise, you can have several types of threats. You can just enumerate all those threats. You can just mention the threats 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. You can put that way. For each threat, you have to measure the risk. For each threat can be given or attributed the financial value. And then you say vulnerability. Now, vulnerability means it can happen, some probability can be involved in that. So that is how this risk is measured. That is how this risk is measured. So therefore, the real measure comes with a certain probabilistic evaluation. That is why the multiplication comes like that. The asset, we can value it. Threat also, we can give a financial value for that. Vulnerability, it's a probability. It's a probability. Because vulnerable means it may happen or may not happen. But there's a probability of that. If you say highly vulnerable, the probability of happening is very much higher. That is what it means. Any question on this? Can you understand what it is? Because as a risk manager, you have to just look at the ways and means of measuring information risk. At a later stage, we just put it as cyber risk or whatever because it's more broad. It's a broader aspect. But here we can start with this. Otherwise, it is very difficult for you to understand what it is. Now, the quantitative risk analysis really we can start with this, the quantitative risk assessment. Now, if you just look at these things in a project perspective, or even we can say, now you are in a project of having your SMI portfolio with a very low NPE. So that is your objective. That is your project, right? So I'm just referring to that. SMI portfolio is there. Now your objective is to minimize the NPA levels of SMI portfolio to say 1.5%. Gross NPA ratio to 1.5%. If that is the project or if that is the objective, so then through that objective, you have to go to the information security on that. So when you do the information security risk assessment, you should be in a position to answer certain questions. That is the aspect, or that is the real purpose of doing an information risk assessment in the quantitative terms. So what are these questions? In what probability we can meet the objective? That is one question which could be answered through that risk assessment. In which probability we would be in a position to achieve that objective? That is the first question. The second question would be, if there's an overrun or if there's a certain deviation, or if we are not in a position to achieve the objective and we will be deviated, and to what extent that deviation can happen. So that is the other thing. And in which place you identify the highest risk, or you can prioritize the particular situations, and if you find that risk is very high, so you can address those things on a priority basis. So these are the requirement of having an information risk quantification. I think, have you got my point? What are the indications? Yes, you can just ask questions if you don't understand this. No, I'm just trying to tell you what is the importance of having this type of a risk assessment. Through that risk assessment, we would be in a position to answer 3 questions. What is the first question? What is the probability of meeting our objective? Now, in my example, I have given one objective, that is minimizing the NPA ratio to 1.5%. Gross NPA ratio to 1.5% is the objective. So, through our risk assessment, information risk assessment, we would be in a position to say that in which probability we can achieve that objective. Because our vulnerabilities are also there. So, that is the probability. So, that probability can be taken into consideration. Then, the second question would be, if there's a deviation, for example, say, rather than achieving 1.5%, you might have ended up with 3%. Then what is the deviation now? What is the real difference? So what is that cost? So that way you can have some idea. The third one is, you could be in a position to identify certain vulnerabilities, and the vulnerability is the highest risk, and that enables you to prioritize those higher type of risk. You can, with an order, you will be in a position to deal with such risk. So this is the requirement of having an estimation of information risk. Have you got my point? If you have any confusion, you just let me ask. Let you ask questions. You ask questions if that is the case. Yes, Lakshan, what do you say? Now we can have a discussion like this. Now, if I find something is not that easy to understand, so I will just explain it on the board, and I can just explain it on a mathematical means. So then you will be in a position to read the book and get the things understood later on. That is the requirement. So otherwise, it is very difficult for me to just put it into a normal presentation and do it, because you might not go through several important aspects. That is the issue. So if you go through this type of a text, then you are in a position to have all the things together. Yes. Anything else you need to clarify on this, or any questions on this? But when you go into qualitative risk assessment, now here we talked about the quantitative risk assessment. Then there can be qualitative risk assessment also. I have seen in most of the time, when you deal with information risk, in most cases, in most of the time, in most organizations, they do only a qualitative assessment. I think that is, you need to just think about it. I don't know whether your organizations do any type of quantitative risk assessment for information risk. Even in Sri Lanka, most of the organizations, they just do a qualitative assessment only. Because this IS audit people and all, those people also try to do something with the quantification, but it is very difficult for them because most of the time they are not going to, or they don't understand it. That is the first thing. But if anyone can go through these things and get some understanding, then it would be very much helpful for your organization. Right. Now we will look at qualitative aspects. So how do you assess in a qualitative form the information risk? Now, basically, for a qualitative assessment, we are not going to attribute numbers. Now, as it is now, I have just given on the board the risk is equal to the assets into threat into vulnerabilities. So there you need to assign numbers for each of these factors. Asset, you have to assign a number. Threats, you have to assign a number. Vulnerability also, you have to assign a number, even though it is in a probability form. Whatever the way, it should be a number. But in qualitative risk assessment, there's no number game. No numbers are assumed. But there should be a categorization of severity level. Severity level. How do you categorize that way? Now, you can remember, no, when we deal with operational risk, we did that. Basically, we did that way. Can you remember when we did the RCSA? KRI, not KRI. So when we did RCSA, we went through that form. Inherent risk, residual risk, and all sort of things. High, medium, low, and that type of basis. Impact and the likelihood. All are given in qualitative form. High likelihood, medium likelihood, low likelihood. In the other side, high impact, medium impact, low impact. So that way, that is what you mean by qualitative. Now, I have seen in several organizations, the qualitative these assessments are being made with a color code. Colors are assigned to each, to give each aspect. Whether high really represented by red color, medium represented by amber, low represented by green. So that way, there's a color code also for this qualitative risk assessment. But I have seen in several organizations, this is the most appropriate one because it can be, understood by the grassroots level. That is the reason to have more qualitative risk assessment than quantitative risk assessment. Basically on information security. We can have quantitative risk assessment without much problems in credit risk management, market risk management, that type of things. But operational risk management to having a quantitative risk assessment would be a little difficult. But there, we would be more comfortable with qualitative risk assessments. And when you do this type of a risk assessment, either with either in quantitative form or qualitative form, the purpose of doing it is to see what are the types of high level risk. and you can prioritize those risks. And the other thing is to do some contingency planning. That is the other aspect of risk assessment. Now, in the contingency planning aspect, there you have to have certain analysis. In the contingency plan, so I will just put it on the board, the contingency planning thing. Contingency planning. Now, to do that, first of all, we need to do business impact analysis. Then the other one is incident response planning. Then disaster recovery planning. Then business continuity planning. Now, I think this gives you a certain understandable type of picture. Now, I have given this answer for you to answer your question on why we do quantitative risk assessment for contingency plan. Because that is how the risk can be treated. Any question on this? I think in most of the organizations this happens. So you can either you can do quantitative assessment or even qualitative assessments. By doing that, you need to prioritize the high level of risk. And then you have to have contingency planning for that. You have to have a business impact analysis on that. Then you have to see what type of incidents and what when an incident happens, how are we going to deal with that? Then when the incident happens, how do you plan the business continuity and recover, disaster recovery? So these are the things which we need to understand. Right. Now, I just put those things as a summary here, and for each category. So now we said incidental management or whatever. Then first of all, you have business impact analysis. So that is the most important thing, business impact analysis. Then you have incident response planning and disaster recovery planning and business continuity planning. Then I will just show you the information security basis from the ground up type of a thing. So that also I will just put on the board. These are the most important things to look at. Now, in order to have a proper information security risk management, information risk management in an organization, you need to inculcate the governance practices into the organization. And when you put it from the ground level to the high level, you have to start with the ground level. The physical security is the first thing. Then you have data security. Then systems and network security. Business communications. When you do business communication, there should be a security for that. You need to have some encryption for that. Then wireless security. Web and application security. Then on the top level, you have security policies and procedures. And employee training and awareness. Now, those will have these things will have to be inserted into the total governance of the organization. Now, I think it is very much important for you to understand the security technologies used by organizations. Nowadays, also you have heard about it. Endpoint security, that is one type. Then application firewalls. Then file encryption. Encryption in transit. Anti-spyware. Then VPN. Firewalls and antivirus. Those are the types of technologies, security technologies used in organizations. Right. I think with that, I think this is enough for you to have an idea about this information security risk management. And we need to go to the cyber risk aspects. Now, you might wonder what is the meaning of what is the difference between information security and cyber. Cyber is a real overall picture. It's a general picture. That is what you need to understand. Right. Can you see the text on the screen?
Yeah, yes.
Right. Identifying, analyzing, and evaluating cyber risk. I think this we had gone through this earlier. Now, you can just look at these insider threats first. Now, just look at it. It can be malicious because it is through people. Insider means that the employees basically. It can be malicious. There's a motive to harm the organization. There can be negligent situations. There's no motive to harm. But there can be another situation, it is accidental. So they have not taken any decision, but accidentally it happens. So any type of activity can be given into that. So this negligent behavior can be with the malicious intention sometimes. Because the negligent act can lead to an accidental type of a thing, or it can lead to a malicious type of a thing. That is how this can be explained. Now you can see again and again we go through the same thing, but this has been given in a more clear manner. Scoping, the 6 phases of IRM, that is integrate information risk assessment and management. The scoping means now we have to go by the most important things, then analyze the business impact or assess. Then threat profiling, you have to have a profile of threats and vulnerability assessment. Through that you can do risk evaluation and treatment. These are the 6 phases. Now we can have a small details here. The first provides guidance for generating an integrated view of information risk, ranging from an organization's business processes through to its technology. That is what you mean by scoping. Provides guidance for generating an integrated view of information risk. Now, it really involves the business process and the technology in use. Second, it offers guidance for realistically assessing worst case scenarios, the potential business impact if information assets become compromised. So some security aspect or security incident happens. And afterwards, what will happen to the business? That is what you call the business impact analysis. Even in business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning, this is a very important aspect, business impact assessment. The third phase is mapping different types of threats. Different type of threats to be mapped. Malicious and accidental or even negligent type of activities. The fourth involves assessing the vulnerabilities to different threat events. The vulnerabilities. Now that vulnerability changes with the threat event or threat, different types of threats. Fifth stage is the evaluation of organization's risk appetite and likelihood of a successful threat in light of the previous findings. What do you mean by successful threat? Successful threat means now if it goes beyond the appetite level of the organization, so that means the organization will get harmed or will get damaged through that. Sixth and final phase involves developing practical approaches to addressing the information risks which have been identified. And security culture. And this is actually very important type of thing, because the central bank or the regulators should they really go by these compliance issues. Now I think this particular text is important here. Uh, Now cyber security was a very primarily a function of IT department, but now it has become a more broad aspect. The organizations established risk managers tended to focus instead on the organization's traditional insurance coverages, and its product line managers rarely felt any connection to the cybersecurity function. That is all starting to change. There are different levels of maturity in cybersecurity across enterprises. Most mature ones have moved into a broader risk function. Those coming up the maturity curve still tend to view their work as part of IT, where security concerns were initially focused. But as the economy assumes a more resilience-oriented approach to preventing and recovering from attacks, we need to view security as a holistic business issue, not just an IT issue. So this is the uh, idea given in most of the information security aspect books and all. There they say it is not an IT type of a function. It's a holistic organizational function, cyber security or cyber risk management. Now it says here, in an ideal world, there should not be any barriers separating data security from the organization's core business functions. In reality, however, most security departments are still not consulted, nor are they viewed as business enabling. I think IT or IS security or information security, uh, IS audit, and all those people being uh, they work in a remote aspect. People don't really regard them as connected to the business. That is in most organizations it happens that way. But now it has become more severe, and cyber security has become highly holistic. In the protection prioritizations, right? I think this text is important, so I will just uh, go through that. Identifying, analyzing, and evaluating. The organization realistically assesses the vulnerabilities of its digital system components, not just for technology flaws, such as in design, encryption, event login, or software malfunction, but for human factors. Trusted insiders present the highest risk, motivated either by malice or more commonly by accident, as well as third-party contractors, vendors, or temporary workers, essentially privileged users. The organization commits to a robust and structured approach to assessing and managing risk and an information risk assessment methodology. This involves a six-part approach to: one, generating an integrated view of information risk; two, realistically assessing worst case; three, mapping in different types of threats, both malicious and accidental; four, assessing vulnerabilities to different threat events and the strength of any controls already in place. Number five, evaluating risk appetite and likelihood of a successful threat. And number six, developing practical approaches to addressing the information risks that have been identified. Other factors examined include organization capability, security culture, commitment, people competence, user privilege patterns, technology leadership, policy, and environment. There is a balance between regulatory compliance and doing everything reasonable to protect mission critical information. Cybersecurity maturity avoids barriers separating data security from the organization's core business functions and does not rely on device centric safeguards. Focus begins and ends with the organization's data. Now, I think this is a very important point to note. The cybersecurity maturity avoids barriers separating data security from the organization's core business functions and does not rely on device-centric safeguards. Now, you can remember now when in about say 5, 6 years back, the security aspects were basically on devices, device-wise type of security being introduced. But it is not the case now. It has to become an overall protection. And it is a mission critical type of a thing. The focus begins and ends with the organization's data, how it is protected, which data is truly mission critical, what behaviors need to be protected against, and who really needs to access it and when. So all these are the uh, things we need to consider when you deal with cyber risk. Right. Now, this particular text is on cyber risk introduction and all. Can you see this? Can you on the screen? Treat in cyber risk.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now you can see the cybersecurity has been in the spotlight for the past few years due to the number and seriousness of cyber incidents. The media's focus on such incidents and the importance of tackling cyber issues in the extensive digitization of most organizations. This area requires the attention of directors and managers everywhere, but it needs to be tackled in the appropriate way and with the required subtlety as a component of integral risk management. So that is why even in our course also, I decided to put in these cybersecurity aspects into your course also, especially under the operational risk management. Now this is a new component added here. In earlier course deliveries, I have not really delivered about cyber risk or cyber risk assessment or whatever. Nowadays, it has become so important. The fact that cybersecurity is important to every organization needs no further explanation. On an almost daily basis, various incidents demonstrate how great the risks are and that individual hackers and professionally organized cyber criminals are extremely active. The heads of organizations need to ensure that their organizations have set the proper priorities. To many, however, this is not a simple task because the world of cybersecurity seems elusive due to its specialist character and the technical jargon used. This is the issue, I think. In most cases, people are not very familiar with that. And the highly jargonized words being used. But heads of organizations need to ensure that their organizations have set the proper priorities. It's not a simple task. And the other thing is it is very difficult to distinguish between primary and secondary issues. And at the same time, the media is also very much active in cyber issues, cyber incidents, and it could become a reputational thing for the organization sometimes. So basically, the cybersecurity risk with the proper nuance in line with an organization's risk profile. So you need to understand. Now, if you are dealing with your organization, then you have to identify the organization's risk profile towards cybersecurity or cyber risk. Now, as it is, the board of directors, the top level managers, or the risk managers, they should understand the profile of organization's risk towards cyber security. Then in an appropriate context only, they should deal with that. They should avoid panicking. Normally, the media paint a very dramatic picture of cybersecurity. But in normal circumstances, you all can see small and medium enterprises may not have that much of issues with cybersecurity, but rather multinational companies would have. But we can't say that it never happens in SMEs. They might have few worries. If you go by the controllability of cybersecurity, cyber risk, it is really controllable, because the cyber criminals are not invincible geniuses, and the government and enterprises have significant knowledge of how to fight cybercrime. But we need to realize that 100% security is an illusion. You should not have 100% security because it is a real illusion. But what you need to do is you have to do risk-based type of security provision. First of all, the profile, to get some idea about the profile, cyber risk profile. Now you have to go by the business environment, intended targets of business, threat actors, vulnerabilities or resilience, legislation. Now, these will decide the cyber risk profile of the organization. If you do it in a more descriptive manner, what is the organization's internal and external context and environment? In which markets is the organization active? To what extent is the organization dependent on the digitization of the organization's service provision? To what extent is the organization linked to another organization that could form an additional risk in this framework? I think even a branch network or overseas branches, overseas companies, or overseas type of businesses, a network will have a higher vulnerability. So then you need to see what are those new vulnerabilities, what could be relevant intended targets within the organization and also within the chain in which the organization is active. So there can be several targets that might be really looked at by the wrongdoers or the culprits. To which group of cybercriminals and why is the organization an attractive target? What type of resources the attacker might deploy? So these are the questions you should answer. Which vulnerabilities in the organization could cybercriminals exploit? Not only technical vulnerabilities, but also human actions also. How fast can an organization be back? That is what you call resilience. Back in business after cyber attack. What are the regulatory and legislative requirements with regard to cybersecurity that pertain to the organization? Now, when you say treating cyber risk, now that is the most important thing. If you need to just consider. Now, when you talk in terms of the treatment, now there you need to protect the crown jewels. That is the statement given here. Humans remain the weakest link, complementing preventive and with detective measures. Preventive and detective. So that means now every time all the employees should have a vigilant type of a stance. How to react if it happens in any case, yeah, how to happen. And it will happen normally. And cooperation needed sectorial and IT partners. So how the treatment measures to be chosen? Now, the next thing is to align. Alignment of cyber risk treatment. This is an important idea. Very important idea where you have to, now technology alone cannot answer these questions. The answer lies in an integrated approach. Now you have to focus not only on software elements, but the other, now software elements means the governance, culture and behavior, and the harder come ones such as technology. Now technology is also a matter here, but not only the technology. So you have to go by the culture, governance and that type of things also. Now there should be a proper leadership and governance for this cyber security management. Now, as it is, the organization leaders need to demonstrate in word and deed that they regard themselves as the owners of cybersecurity and show that they intend to manage the associated risk adequately. So that is, they should do by example. Then human behavior. Cybersecurity involves not only the appropriate technical measures but also the creation of a culture in which people are alert to and aware of ways in which they can contribute to security. So this is a very important point. So for that, we need to have some awareness programs to check the to give some awareness to the employees, not only the IT employees, all the employees. An adequate approach to all embracing and effective risk management with regard to information provisions and with partner organizations also. In business continuity and crisis management, operations and technology, legislations. Right. Now, the things are given in a more complicated basis. So therefore, we need to just look at it in that form. Now, when you say practicing cyber risk treatment, so this is the important thing for an organization. how you are going to practice it. Now, you can't say that since your organization is a smaller one, you are not going to have cyber risk or whatever. Now, everywhere we find it. Because with that, after the COVID-19 outbreak, most of the organizations, they began to deal with online channels. Right. Now, just look at it. Now, this figure is given as an overarching perspective over cyber risk requiring treatment. Right. Now, first of all, you look at the top level there. You have 4 boxes. Now, the first box talks about new or change in legal and regulatory requirements. Now, I think most of the cases, most organizations now come across new regulations, and if the regulations are there, some of these regulations might have changed. Then benchmarking with peer organizations. So you have to look at the peer organizations, their behavior on cyber security and all that. That is what you mean by benchmarking. Then the worst case business information scenarios. Some worst case scenarios also to be taken into consideration. And enterprise risk management. Now all these things will decide on the cyber risk appetite. Because you can't just say that you are not going to you don't have an appetite. So you can't say that. There can be a certain amount of cyber risk you need to bear. That is what you mean by appetite. That depends on your enterprise risk management, your worst case business information scenarios, benchmarking with peer organizations, new change in legal and regulatory requirements. Then you just do top-down proactive risk management. Right, we can have a break now. I will come back by 10:50, and in the meantime, you just look at this diagram, and you can have your own inquiries or own type of issues you have. We can have a discussion on that. I will keep the things on the screen yet, even though I just stop now. I will be coming back by 10:50. Right. Coming back to the session. So I don't know whether you have gone through that diagram. Now in that diagram, I just told you that the cyber risk appetite is decided through the top level boxes. Now those things are given there. new or change in legal and regulatory requirements, benchmarking with peer organizations, worst case business information scenarios, and enterprise risk management. And through those things, the cyber risk appetite is decided. Then you have top-down proactive risk management where they have a risk register for that, risk assessment, where you have the identification, analysis, and evaluation, then security monitoring, compliance, and risk treatment. So then there can be a generation of reports, reporting to IT, businesses, several businesses, the cybersecurity program, portfolio management. Then audits and self-assessment management, test, all these things come in under compliance and monitoring. Then the vulnerability testing. Now that is being done, emerging threats. Now that's a type of ongoing vigilance, emerging threat intelligence, agile incident response, actionable situational awareness. So that is what you call the vulnerability testing. So I think this gives a certain type of understanding for your risk, cyber risk thing. Now you can see, now in an organization, even though you might not have a cyber risk management process, you have other risk management process, and we call it the embedded risk management process. So when cyber is assessed as relevant for the organization, they can be assessed and treated by senior management and experienced specialists. The cyber risk assessment process to avoid, accept, transfer, or mitigate. Now you can just see the way it can be done. Avoiding the activity that gives rise to the risk. Taking or increasing the risk in order to pursue an opportunity. But I think in this case, we might not have that type of a thing here because it is not as a business risk, because this is an operational risk. For an operational risk, you can't increase the value through assuming risk. Removing the risk source, changing the likelihood, changing the consequences, sharing the risk with other parties, and retaining the risk by informed decisions. These are the risk treatment types. Right. Now I think this this slide or this caption you can go through and get an understanding about the treating of cyber risk. The organization's risk treatment capabilities align with its risk profile, risk appetite, and context. Risk treatment methodology is not reinvented for cyber risk, but is a subset of the normal enterprise risk management system. So this is not a new thing or whatever. You can just explain it as a type of an operational risk. So then in your normal risk profile, you are treating these things. But here you have a specialized type of a risk that is coming under operational risk. Risk treatment covers all cyber risk sources, likelihoods, and impacts. These sources include supply chain. From supply chain, the cyber risk can come. Cloud computing, mobile devices, and social media. Impacts are either non-insurable in nature or insurable in part or whole. Now, this is another factor you need to understand, because when you treat risk, you can treat risk through getting insurance, when that risk can be taken as an insurable risk. But if it is not an insurable risk, you are not going to do that. You can't do that. So, but that risk can be coming through a supply chain or through cloud computing or mobile devices, because you in your network you ask all mobile users to use your application systems or whatever it is for a bank. Like there are several applications given by banks using through mobile devices, so therefore the cyber risk incidents are very much high. And social media impacts are either non-insurable in nature or insurable in part or whole, and may take various forms such as fines, reputational damage, loss of customers, loss of employees, and stock evaluations. Impact management preparations are required for insurable risk. Crisis management, forensics investigations, customer identification, notifications, and business interruption. Cyber risk treatment is prioritized, reiterative, and cyclical. Risk owners complete risk and control action plans that balance threat with opportunity to organization objectives and consider cost benefit. Appropriate combined treatment options are not mutually exclusive, are appropriate to the case in hand, and are aligned with ISO 31000 2009. That is the ISO standard. Number one, avoiding the activity that gives rise to the risk. I think you need to make note on this. You can highlight that. Right. Avoiding the activity that gives rise to the risk. That is number one. Number two, taking or increasing the risk in order to pursue an opportunity. But I don't think that this is material in this case, because since it is an operational risk, you might not find any situation where you can increase the risk and get an opportunity or whatever. But even if you have, very, very rarely you can have that type of a thing. But number three, removing the risk source. Number four, changing the likelihood. Number five, changing the consequences. Number six, sharing the risk with other parties. Now that is risk financing or contracts. And number seven, retaining the risk by informed decision. So that means you have a risk appetite and you can have that risk absorbed through some informed decision. You can have a discussion with the other parties and see whether it can be done. Right. So with that, we have just gone through the cyber risk treatment methodologies, and I think you need to make note on these things. And I think this is the one you need to go through again. Right. Now, you have anything to clarify now what we have done? Right. Now we will go to another area where, right. Now you can see the text on the screen. Can you see the text on the screen? Treating rivalries risk using process capabilities.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now earlier we did the normal treatment, and that treatment methodology has been given at the end of that one. And here uh, the consideration is for process capabilities, because I think this is a more practical type of a thing where for any organization, those processes can be identified. Now you can identify the particular processes in the organization for the time being. I mean, it is at present those processes would be there, and those processes can be identified. And you have to check whether it can treat the cyber risk. So then you can select such processes, and those are the capabilities of the organization. So that we call it cybersecurity processes are the glue that binds. So that means if you can identify processes in the organization, may not be, so sometimes it is in the organization itself, and you can identify that, and you can just make use of those capabilities to treat cyber risk. Right, now you can just look at the last sentence here. The cybersecurity processes form the critical piece between those performing the security function and the technology. So, in other words, the technology could be used, the process which can uh, assisted by technology would become the critical piece to manage or treat cybersecurity. So you can just see there can be undocumented processes. So that is a type of a tribal knowledge dependency and very premier type of a thing, very primitive type of a thing. So I don't think that a modern organization should go for that type of a thing. Even no intrinsic motivation to document the things. So that is the other one, another issue. Move routine actions to operations. Now you can see the way it can be done. Now this is the way it can be done, because you have to identify the processes, the capable processes where you can treat the cyber risk. Now we can go through this and see how we can do that. Here it says the move routine actions to operations. Move routine actions to operation. Information security personnel are more expensive resources relative to the computer operations areas that have been optimized for efficiency. Thus, these resources should be leveraged to design the most appropriate processes with the view of moving these processes to a production operation as soon as possible, executed by less expensive resources. So that means you can identify the process and it can be routinized. There's no need of specialist type of people to handle that. So normal people can handle, and the only thing is you need to identify the process and it can be routinized. In the preceding vulnerability management example, most of the running of the vulnerability reports could be run by an external security operations center or a managed security services provider that operates the process and patches the vulnerabilities according to the risk acceptance level and the priority established by the cybersecurity team designing the process. This frees up the cybersecurity professional to focus on other high value efforts versus spending time managing the routine operational work. The cybersecurity team could be focused on the exception reports or those cybersecurity items that need further analysis and other potential technology tools to mitigate effectively. I don't know whether you got this point. It is like this. What you need to do is, in the organization, you should identify the processes where you treat the cyber risk. And those processes can be handled by non-specialized people, or you can outsource to a party. So if you can do that, the cybersecurity personnel would be in a position to deal with high valued and more vulnerable type of cyber risk. So they can make use of their time for that. Then the priorities they can establish that way. So that is the meaning of moving routine actions to operations. Do you have any question or any clarification on that? Is it possible? That's what I'm asking. In your organizational point of view, would it be possible? Would it be possible? That's what I'm asking. Yes, you should join with the discussion. Then only you will be in a position to refer these text again and then get the important thing out of that. Yes. Can you put something in? Yes. What do you say? Yes, Suresha? Anything can you put in? Because this is a specialized area. So by going through these things, you can get that knowledge. And that would be very much helpful for you to deal with those things in the organization. And what you need to do is you need to see how you can apply these things into your practical scenarios. Right now, if you do not have any issues here, then I will go into the next section. There you get leveraging COBIT-5 processes. An organized set of practices and activities to achieve certain objectives and procedure. Produce a set of outputs in support of achieving cybersecurity objectives aligned to enterprise objectives. The process shown as an appendix to this chapter in table 9.1. Cybersecurity risk and process capabilities are adapted from two professional guides designed to assist in the understanding and implementation of the COBIT-5 framework. Specifically, the ISACA COBIT-5 implementation for information security. Professional guides. It clearly presents common business scenarios alongside their corresponding risk and capabilities. Right, now you can just look at these things. We can just go through that. Now you might get the resources in the left-hand side, left-hand corner, you get it. Then you get the next column as the reason for that, the threats. And COBIT-5 process capabilities are given in the right-hand side. Now just look at it. Benefit and value enablement risk. IT program selection. Now IT program selection is the source of risk, because depending on your program selection, you would have to face with some vulnerability. That is what you call the risk coming from that. So what are the threats on that? Incorrect program selected for implementation and misaligned with corporate strategy and priorities. So this can happen. So you might have selected the program, but that program is not the proper correct program for your business requirement, and it is misaligned with corporate strategy and priorities. So any organization, it could happen. Or another vulnerability is duplication among different initiatives. New and important program creates long-term incompatibility with the enterprise architecture. So this is another type of a vulnerability. So I think here they have given 3 vulnerabilities. Number 1, incorrect program selected for implementation and misaligned with corporate strategy and priorities. The program which have been selected is misaligned. That is misaligned with corporate strategy and priorities. That is one vulnerability. The other vulnerability is duplication among different initiatives. So that is duplication means you have several initiatives but the same thing. There's nothing new. Then the other one, new and important program creates long-term incompatibility. It could be a long-term incompatibility with the enterprise architecture. So there's an architecture, the computer architecture in the enterprise, but the new program or whatever, it doesn't align. It is incompatible with the enterprise architecture. So these are there. I think in this particular IT program selection, under IT program selection, 3 vulnerabilities have been discussed. And then we can see how we can treat that. How we can treat that. Align the first one, incorrect program selected for implementation and misaligned with corporate strategy and priorities. So that is the vulnerability. So that vulnerability can be treated by alignment of cybersecurity with IT and business frameworks. Cybersecurity is integrated with architecture. So these are the things which you can do if you think that the vulnerability of that nature is there. Now, actually, now there are several points being raised here. Now, if I take all these points, now all these vulnerabilities being addressed by all these points or some of these points. Alignment of cybersecurity with IT and business framework. So that is one thing. No, I mean that really addresses the first one. Then innovation promoted on cybersecurity. So that's another issue. Another thing. Establish cybersecurity target investments. Cybersecurity requirements in feasibility study. So all these things can treat the vulnerabilities identified in the under the IT program selection. And just to look at the source of risk as new technologies, I think nowadays most of the organizations face with this risk because they go for new technologies because there's no other way. They have to go for new technologies, but there can be several vulnerabilities coming up with new technologies. Right, now we can see what are the types of vulnerabilities which can arise from getting new technologies into operation. Right, first one, failure to adopt and exploit new technologies. So it can be the functionality, it can be optimization in a timely manner. Then new and important technology trends not identified. Trend has not been identified. Inability to use technology to realize desired outcomes, or failure to make required business model or organizational changes. So even with the new technology, you can deliver results only by adopting a suitable business model. Or there should be some organizational changes to deal with new technologies. So if you don't not do that, then there will be a big vulnerability on these things. Right, now you can see the treatment advisors here. Measure effectiveness, efficiency and capacity of cybersecurity resources against business need. Define target state for cybersecurity. IT and cybersecurity architecture align with current technology trends. Scan external environment and identify emerging cybersecurity trends. Create feasible new technology solutions while minimizing risk. Now, all these things are the techniques for treating these vulnerabilities or treating this risk. Integrate cybersecurity in new technology design. Then technology selection. Now here the IT program selection. Here the new technologies. Now it is in general, right? New technologies is a normal universal happening. It is not for the organization, but new technologies come into the market, come into the environment. But technology selection is it's an appropriate one for the organization, technology selection. Now there you can see the vulnerabilities. Incorrect technologies. Now that is, it can be incorrect in terms of cost, in terms of performance, in terms of features, in terms of compatibility. Selected for implementation. So why do we say it is incorrect? It is not the correct cost. It is not the correct performance level. It is not the correct features. It is not compatible even. So these are the issues which can arise. Now, are you following me? Because you need to give some inputs, because I think there are several practical impacts here. What I feel is that some of you might have engaged in these things. What do you say? When you select some technology, new technology for your organization to just deal with, you need to see this type of vulnerabilities. There would be this type of vulnerabilities. So for that, the treatment is through developing clear information security criteria. Cybersecurity architecture is aligned and evolves with changes. Cybersecurity specifications in line with design. Security impacts of technology selection. And then you get another source of risk, IT investment decision making. Because when you select some IT program or whatever, there should be an investment decision for that. Because you need to go by the cost, you need to go by the return, you need to go by the functionality and all sort of things. Right. They are the vulnerabilities, business managers or representatives not involved in important IT investment decision making regarding new applications, prioritization or new technology opportunities. So this is a normal issue in most of the organizations, because IT investment decision making is made by some IT specialists, not the business managers. That is the issue. But I think some of the organizations have now been able to get rid of this issue. They have some overall committees to do IT investment decision making. In those committees, all the business levels been represented. Now there you have the treatment methodologies, value management direction, and oversight for cybersecurity. And business and cybersecurity involvement in IT strategic planning. Cybersecurity investment fit with target enterprise architecture. Cybersecurity investments allocated by risk appetite. Develop cybersecurity budget. Understanding of business, how cybersecurity affects it or enables it. Program management, stage gating. Then the next one, accountability over IT. Business not assuming accountability over those IT areas, such as functional requirements, development priorities, and assessing opportunities. This is a normal thing in any organization, because the technology and all these things being really given to only the IT people. Business people, they know that they are really using it, but they are not assuming accountability. So then the treatment can be made by having executive management accountable for cybersecurity related decisions, business, IT related and cybersecurity roles and responsibilities, clear and approved service agreements including cybersecurity, supplier relationship and requirements based on risk profile. Visible leadership through executive commitment to cybersecurity. Visible leadership through executive commitment to cybersecurity. Then IT project termination. Now, what I need you to do is, now you can just go through these things basically. There are here, you can just look at these things, risk sources and the treatments or whatever, and the vulnerabilities or risk, whatever the threats or whatever, and then the treatment. So looking at these things, you should be in a position to identify some project or some type of an activity in relation to cybersecurity in your organization. Right? And you have to just adopt these things into your organization's activity and see how you can treat those threats, the process treatment or whatever. That is what you can do. So in order to get a practical knowledge for these things, you can try that. Now I am asking you, one of you can say, your organization also had come across this type of situation in cybersecurity. Can you do that? Can you now give any type of an example of that nature? I don't know whether you got my question clear. Is that question clear? Yes. Is that question clear? What I am asking is, you can go through this schedule and just select one of the risk sources and just look at the possible threats of that and see the mitigations also. You can hypothetically, or you can find a true type of a scenario in your organization. And how do you adopt these things into your that type of a risk source in your organization? Now is it okay? Have you understood what I said? What I am asking is, now can you just come up with a certain scenario in your organization or in a hypothetical situation of this nature? Because then you can explain what you have done, what your organization has done for that when it really faces with that type of an issue. Because that is what we need to understand, right? Because otherwise, now just listening to my delivery or whatever may not help you, because you also should actively engage in this. You need to ask questions, you need to discuss something, you need to just put forward your experience or whatever. So that is what you how you can engage in the discussion. Otherwise, this won't be a value addition. I think you got my question clear. You understood it. If not, you can ask questions. Tirukuma, Uresha. Can you come up with one of your practical or your experience or whatever in your organization?
So I don't have any experience.
So anyway, any hypothetical scenarios also you can have, because the cyber security is not a, though it's a specialized area, any organization might come across cyber security incidents. Now, even say it may not be an incident, but sometimes any organization might invest in IT. So that's one scenario. Or sometimes they just purchase a software package or something like that. So that is everywhere in the world. I think that happens, for any organization. Therefore, I think you all can give some type of input on that. That's what I'm asking.
So in our organization,
Yeah.
basically we do have continuous employee awareness and the
Yeah.
training, because it's
Yeah.
like time to time we have to go through cybersecurity programs individually. That's kind
Yeah.
of self-assessment, and we have to make sure we pass. Otherwise, our system access and everything will be blocked.
Uh-huh. Right. I think, as you say, the awareness is the most important thing for normal type of employees. But only thing is, though the awareness is there, but that awareness should be very constructive. Otherwise, now mere awareness would not help. The thing is, now there should be a certain vigilance level among every employee, because then they are in a position to detect or anything like cyber incident or whatever. Normally what happens is that the detection is made after a long time. That is the issue. So therefore, if everyone has a vigilance towards that, that is the practicality of this. Now that's what I am asking you, because you can just applicable, it is an applicable type of a thing where you can just go through this type of sources of risk and see whether in any time or at any time in your organization you had that type of a scenario. Because you can't say that your organization has not purchased software or whatever, IT programs, that type of things. Or sometimes they do some investments in a project, like say, I'm just giving an example. Say the project is uh, risk rating system, credit risk model. So that is also a software package. Now it really deals with, sometimes it might have some vulnerabilities on cybersecurity. So they are also, I think, so you can just go into that basis. Now just have it as an example, right? Purchasing IT package for credit risk rating model. So that can be taken as an example, right? So then we can see to what resource or risk resource is that. Resource is that. Okay, we will see that. Now, my example is purchasing IT package or software package to operate a credit risk rating system, right? So then out of this sources, what source is relevant for that type of thing. So we can say IT program selection, that is one thing. Or even we can say technology selection. Or we can say that is an IT investment decision making. Because it's a package, no? Package in the sense it's a software run, that software has to run. So this is also possible heading for that. It is investment decision making, is it? So I think you can just apply it to anywhere here. Now it is also a technology selection, is it? Normally you do the credit risk rating by manual basis, and you have some type of worksheet or whatever, scorecard or whatever. You do it manually and you arrive at the risk rating for your customer. That is what you have done earlier. But when you have a software package for that, then it would be new technology. And it would be an IT investment decision making to purchase it, take the decision to purchase it. And it's a new technology also. Right? I think, have you got my point? If not, you just argue with me. That is also a possible thing, no? I mean, you can't say that you have not done any, the cybersecurity aspects to be taken into consideration from anything. Now say, I am just taking into consideration my example, right? Now we can take it as new technology also. So then I can go by the new technologies, the topic new technologies, right? That is the source. So how can it be a risk for us? Failure to adopt and exploit new technologies. Now, say, now we got that risk rating model into our organization. But if we are not in a position to adopt it, its functionality cannot be adopted. You can't optimize that in a timely manner. And you have taken it and you have done it for, you did several test runs or whatever, but you have not come to the practical situations. You have not used it. So if that is the case, it is the failure to adopt and exploit new technologies. And sometimes you might have purchased a software package which is outdated. So you have not identified the trend at the purchase when you purchase that software package. So then you can say that is the vulnerability of new and important technology trends not identified. So then you might not be able to use that package to realize the desired outcomes. Inability to use technology to realize desired outcomes. So all these things is really suitable for that type of an example. So I'm just asking you, you also can give another example of that nature. And you can just see how you can adopt these things into that example. Now can you understand what I'm telling? Yes. Now can anyone come up with some example of that nature? Say for example, a decision to purchase an ATM machine, right? That is also IT. It is also going through an IT budget, no? So then the topic can be identified here for that. If you have purchased an ATM which is outdated, then what happens? So likewise, you can just see the vulnerabilities. You can imagine those vulnerabilities. Now you got my point. Or sometimes, there's an account, account opening process. There's a software process for account opening, because you enter the data and then afterwards you just register the data, and it should go to the database and all. That's an application. No? Now, if you have some problem in that application, or sometimes you might have to change that process. Now, when you change the process, you have to apply new technology. Then it's a type of investment you have done. So you ask your software people or some vendors to do some amendments to your program of account opening. And there you can have some vulnerabilities. So you can say that it's an IT investment. So you can go to that particular place and just see what type of things will happen. Here, IT investment decision making. Business managers or representatives not involved in important IT investment. So in order to take a decision on this account opening process change or whatever, amended account opening process, the business managers also to be taken into the decision making process. So that is what it says. Now, is it okay with you? Now, are you in a position to come up with example like that? Yes. No, otherwise I think this is really not very worthwhile, because I just deliver the things and you just listen. What if you are not taking it actively, then I think the effectiveness or the value addition would be very much less. So there can be several issues here: software implementation, project delivery, project quality, state of infrastructure technology. Now all these are very high level activities. Now what I am asking now is to just go through these things, and you should identify certain type of examples pertaining to your organization to verify these things. And sometimes you might have to adopt to a certain extent in order to put it compatible with you, what you have selected. Now, in the left-hand side, you can see ample number of sources of cyber risk. Sources of cyber risk. Right, I can just show you something here also. Information media, right? That is the source of risk, source of cyber risk. Now the vulnerabilities are given here. Loss, disclosure of portable media. That is either CD, USB, or portable disk or whatever, containing sensitive data, loss of backup media, accidental discourse of sensitive information due to failure to follow information handling guidelines. Now, all these things can happen in any organization. And just see how we can treat that type of issues. Policies and guidance on protection and use of IT assets, protection of mobile and or removable storage and media devices. So if the policies and guidelines are in practice, then there's a less chance of happening this type of things. Now, just look at it, this one, logical attacks. Now, one is the virus attack, unauthorized users trying to break into systems, denial of service attack, website defacing, industrial espionage. Now, all these things can happen. Those are cyber risk, actually. Right, now here, the risks related to information technology implementations are noted as risk sources in the matrix. And a sampling of the COVID-5 processes that could be used to mitigate the risks are shown in the far right column as COVID-5 process capabilities. The COVID-5 framework contains processes for the enablement of information technology, much of which can apply to cybersecurity practices. The COVID-5 for Information Security Professional Guide extends the definition of these processes by adding processes specific to cybersecurity. Now, this is another important part. Each of the cybersecurity processes has a life cycle by which the process is defined, created, monitored, updated, and subsequently retired. New technologies are introduced that may negate the need for a process or significantly alter the process. For example, a cybersecurity policy in the past may have required that sensitive files be placed on a network server and not on the laptop or desktop. A change to the process by moving to a cloud storage provider with contractual backups for implementing laptops with encryption and backup software may remove the need to restore information on a central network server to ensure the contents are appropriately backed up on a regular schedule. So I think this is another way you can look at it, because rather than backing it up or without putting it to the network, so you can back up on a regular schedule. That is, I think, more relevant to a cloud computing environment. The cybersecurity process components would include the process description, identification of stakeholders, goals, life cycle, and good practices. Now, there's a summarization here. Treating cyber risk using process capabilities. Cybersecurity process capabilities provide the governance and management practices necessary to effectively and efficiently align the cybersecurity program with the business enterprise objectives. Detailed activities are developed to support the cybersecurity practices to provide governance. Now, in the sense, the governance means evaluate, direct, and monitor, manage, align, plan, and organize the work. Create solutions, build, acquire, and implement, sustain, deliver service and support, and improve, monitor, evaluate, and assess. These processes form a cybersecurity life cycle with defined inputs and outputs based on generally accepted good practices that, taken together holistically, can serve to reduce the organizational cybersecurity risk. In short, the cybersecurity, cyber risk, treating cyber risk using process capabilities is a very important thing for an organization, because it says how the process capabilities can be utilized to having a treatment of cyber risk. That is what we have now discussed. So I think for that, this schedule is very, very important. It's a long schedule, but it is very important to note how you can make use of the processes to treat the cyber risk. So it's a long process, a long schedule. I think how many pages are there? About 5-6 pages, more than 5-6, I think. It's 126. Right. You make a note that it is starting on page 126 and ending at 134. So altogether 8 pages. 8 pages. So you should go through those 8 pages and just identify more than one risk sources, taking into consideration your organization, right? Taking into consideration your organization, and just adopt the things given in that, and you need to do at least 3 sources and the appropriate vulnerability treatments. And by going through this schedule, and you need to just suggest the treatment methodologies for those risk sources and the vulnerabilities in your organization. I will put it on the board, the question, right? Because there you need to identify these things, and then only you learn something. Otherwise, you won't learn anything, right? So you make a note there, and this is table 9.1. Table 9.1, and it starts on page number 126, ending on 134, right? I will just put it on the board, right? What you should do. Right, I will read it for you. If it is not clear, so I will read it for you. You should go through the table 9.1 from page 126 to 134. So this is the particular one what I have now discussed, and find out at least 4 risk sources which would be relevant to your organization and explain the threats as they materialize in the organization and how the process be identified to treat the cyber risk. Because in short, you have all the things in that document. Only thing is it should be adopted for your organization's needs. That's the only thing that I'm asking. This is nothing serious, I mean. But you should get some practical aspect out of this. That is why I just asked that question from you. Do you have any issues with that question? So you can really note it down. You should go through the table 9.1 from page 126 to 134 and find out at least 4 risk sources which would be relevant to your organization and explain the threats as they materialize in the organization and how the processes be identified to treat the cyber risk. Are you comfortable with that? Have you really understood it? Yes, Uresha?
Yes, sir.
Tirukumar?
Yes, sir.
Right. Right, others also should do that. Now, anything else you need to clarify on this before going into the next one? Because I think this will give you the real knowledge you should gain from that area, that particular chapter. So if you do this, you will really understand the particular content in that chapter. Right. Then I just go into this treating cyber risk using insurance and finance. So this is another topic. And earlier we discussed about how we can utilize our processes to treat cyber risk. That is the earlier one which we have discussed. That is chapter 9. Chapter 10 talks about using insurance and finance for treating cyber risk. Now, first of all, we need to do a cost benefit model in life. Now, IT security versus insurance, that is what it means. I think this is a little quantifiable thing. It talks about the insurance and financing type of a thing. Right, we can just look at it in a. The reason for the board's ask is simple. A cyber breach, no matter what kind or if it makes the front page of the paper, would have an impact on the organization's balance sheet. The global cost of cybercrime is predicted to hit $6 trillion annually by 2021. So I think now we have already come to that level. This is mapped in figure 10.1. This is financial statement impact of a cyber incident. So you can just look at it and see how it can become a financial statement impact, because it will affect the financial statement. It will affect the balance sheet. So then it is a reputational damage, it is a liquidity damage, or whatever it is. So you just look at the things. Security and or privacy incidents. So that is the cyber incident you are talking about, and it will be result in stock drop, derivative or shareholders class action, or disaster and organization policy. Directors and officers policy. So the other way you can see down the line. Now this security and privacy incident can become a regulatory compliance issue, mandatory breach of a notification. Then it will result in the civil lawsuit. Then breach response expense. If you breach some condition or whatever, you will be penalized. And it will affect the network security and privacy policy. And there will be a regulatory investigation. Individual directors and officers will be in trouble. So there will be claims, network and security privacy claims, D&O claims, coverage, overlap, or whatever. Now, there are some incidents here reported. Home Depot, one incident in 2015 it happened. Target crop dismissal, that is 2016 happened. And Heartland Payments, it is 2008. TJX, 2010. And Windham Worldwide, that is 2014. Right now, I hear the first or two or three sentences gives a certain idea about the cyber hacks. While we hear about the big cyber hacks like Sony, TJ Maxx, and the massive October 21st, 2016 Internet of Things facilitated attack on Dean, there are many types of cyber risks that could have a material negative impact on an organization. System failures, employee mistakes, and Simple negligence such as leaving a laptop or thumb drive in a taxi are some of the non-criminal cyber perils that can lead to material financial economic losses. So, in fact, the average cost of a cyber breach range from $2 million to nearly $8 million, with 8 incidents over 75 million and the largest losses over 300 million, according to publicly disclosed documents. Right now, that is why we should see the ways and means of putting it into insurance. Now the quadrants are given here for this diagram. First party and the third party. If it is financial, any major cyber event will result in financial. And this one, it is the third parties will seek to recover. And this one, those are tangible things where physical damage is possible. And here, physical damage may cascade to others. Right, you can just see the types of the incidents. Right now, you can see the first party, that is the organization, will have to face with when any major cyber event happens. It can result in response, PR response, and continuity cost, immediate and extended revenue losses, restoration expenses, and defense cost. All these things will constitute the cost, first party. Now, when you get the third party things, third parties will seek to recover civil penalties and awards, consequential revenue losses, restoration expenses. Now, as a result of your cyber incident, your customers would have some losses, would have some damages. So then those customers can sue the organization for their losses. And sometimes there can be penalties imposed by regulators. Then you get to the physical damage, the tangible type of thing. Property damage can happen. Then bodily harm can happen. Now, the second part is the physical damage may cascade to others. Then it would be property, third-party property damage, third-party bodily injury. Now, all these things can be, now those are the main quadrants of losses which can happen through a cyber risk incident or cyber incident. Okay. Now, I think today we have gone through a couple of text, couple of chapters on cyber security, and I just gave you the highlights of those chapters and have a discussion. I have asked you to just engage with the discussion with some active, in an active manner. But I have not seen that type of activity in that. Anyway, I have now given you a certain assignment or whatever, some exercise where you have to go through the table 9.1 and just identify 4 sources of cyber risk in your organization, and just the how it is been materialized, the particular threats been materialized, and how do you treat those things with the particular given processes. At least you have to select 4 sources. So that is what you have to do. By doing that, you will get insight into the chapter 9 and treating cyber risk through process capabilities. That is the topic for that. Anyway, next week we will try to deal with business continuity and the disaster recovery type of arrangements through cyber risk incidents. With that, I think we don't have more time to discuss further. Anything else you need to clarify? Anything else you need to clarify? Yes. Make sure that you read the text which I have given to you. You can focus on the highlighted areas only. And if you need to get more details, so there are ways of getting more details. What I feel is if you can just adopt these things into your organizational setups, then it is very easy for you to gather the insights. Right. Anything you need to clarify? Since the cyber security aspects are very much important during this time, that's what I have just added these things into the course, because this course has to be updated every day. Every time it has to be updated. That is why I have just added these things here. Right. So with that, I wind up the session today. Thank you very much, all of you, for your participation. We will meet on next Sunday morning. Thank you very much.